Okay, this is our first problem. It says a photo is twice as long as it is wide. The area is 288 square inches or inches squared. What are the dimensions? So again, the first thing that we want to do is analyze this problem. We need to go through and look at the specific parts of the problem. So in the beginning it says a photo is again, meaning equal, twice as long as it is wide. Okay, so what does that mean? So again, for all of these problems you need to have your four-step process, which means you need to identify the variable, set up the equation, work it out, and then give me an answer. Okay, so the question says what are the dimensions? So the first part is we need to find length and width. We don't know those two. But it says the photo is twice as long as it is wide. Okay, so twice as long as it is wide, so it is, the length is referring to the width. Okay, so that means that the length is 2w, or if you label w as being your x, then the length is 2x. Okay. Step number 2 is you need to come up with an equation. It tells you that we're working with area. A photo or is a rectangular shape, so we're going to have to use the formula for area of a rectangle. So I am just going to give a basic formula for area. Area is length times width. Well, what's our length? Our length is 2x. My width is x. My area is 288. So again, this is step 2. This is the basic equation that I'm looking for here. This is just a skeleton equation here, but this is the equation I'm looking for here. Next, we need to solve. We need to solve for x. So remember, we've got to simplify this here. So 2x times x is 2x squared. Move this over here. Equals 288. Remember, if I'm asking you to solve and you have a quadratic equation or you have an x squared, you have to have a 0 on one side of the equation. So I need to move the 288 over to the left-hand side because I want to keep this x squared positive. So I'm going to subtract 288 from both sides. I get 2x squared minus 288 equals 0. Okay, we need to then solve, we need to factor this. And the first thing you should be asking yourself, are there any GCFs? And that is a yes, because this is 2 and that's an even number, so I can factor out a 2. So this becomes x squared minus 144 equals 0. Now I would really like this 2 to go away, so what I'm going to do is divide both sides by 2. And that gets the 2 to go away, because 0 divided by anything is just 0. So this needs to be factored. Remember on your brain dump that we did in class, if it's a binomial with subtraction in the center and you've got perfect squares on both sides of the subtraction sign, these are perfect squares. So these factor out to x plus 12 and x minus 12. Now we're still not done. We still need to solve for x. So therefore I need to set each of these equal to 0. Minus 12 on both sides on this one, so I get x equals a negative 12. Add 12 on both sides, and I get x equals a positive 12. So remember, these x's are referring to the width. Can we have a negative 12 as our width? And the answer is no, we cannot. So we can only take the positive here. Okay, so in word problems we are not allowed to take a negative value, we can only take a positive value. So that means I'm going to substitute it back up here. My width is 12, and my length is 2 times 12, which is 24. And again, these are feet because our area was in feet squared. Or sorry, not feet, inches. My bad. Inches. Okay. Always check to make sure that you've answered the question. The question are, what are the dimensions? The dimensions is 12 inches by 24 inches. And we're done. Okay, the next problem says a triangular sail is 15 feet taller than it is wide. The area is 125 feet squared. Find the dimensions. Now, in the book and on my math lab, a lot of the problems are going to be given to you in picture form. That is not going to happen on the test. Again, if you need to draw a picture, you need to draw your own picture. I will not be providing a picture. So this is a triangular sail. So that right there, I mean, if you need to come down here on your paper somewhere and draw a picture, please do so. Okay, triangular sail. Sail looks like that. It says is, meaning equals, 15 feet taller than it is wide. So again, like the previous one, the length or the height is referring to the width. So we are missing two dimensions here. We are missing the height here, and we're missing the base, or the width, whichever one you want to call it. Okay, so again, 15 feet taller than it is wide. So the height is referring to the base or the width here. So that means that this is our x, and that this is x plus 15, because 15 feet taller than. This is the same thing as saying more than, so therefore this is the width plus 15. Remember, if it says more than, less than, taller than, that this is written backwards. The width goes first, then the plus 15. Again, that's a good habit to do just in case you do have the words less than. If it has the words less than, you have to write it backwards. You don't necessarily have to write it backwards when it comes to addition, but again, it's a good habit to have. Okay? So, in your picture, I would take that as identifying your variables. You don't have to, again, number the steps out. If you want to, you can. You don't have to. But this is enough for me for identifying the variable by labeling a picture. Okay, the next step is to put down an equation. Again, I like to do what I call a skeleton equation. So the skeleton equation is that area equals base times height divided by 2. Or you can use 1/2 base times height. I don't care which one you use. Again, either one are correct. As long as you use a form of these, I'm happy. So that is just a skeleton equation. This is not an equation that you're going to get points for. We need to then substitute what we do know about this equation into the equation. So the area is 125. The base is x. The height is x plus 15. Remember, when we're substituting something that is a binomial, you need to use parentheses. That's all being divided by 2. Okay, so that's step 2, meaning that you've set up your equation. Step 3 is then to work this out. We need to simplify the numerator here, so we get 125 equals x squared plus 15x, because again, we are distributing the x on the outside here to this binomial, divided by 2. I would really like to get rid of this fraction. So to get rid of the fraction, we do the opposite. It's being divided by 2. This whole numerator is being divided by 2. So to get rid of it, I do the opposite. So I multiply this side by 2, and I multiply this side by 2. Again, what I do to one side, I do to the other. The 2's here cancel. Do not distribute the 2. If you distribute the 2, you're just making the problem more complicated. Okay. 2 times 125 is 250. Again, we are trying to solve this equation, which means I need a 0 on one side. It doesn't matter which side the 0 is on, but again, we want to keep the x squared positive, so we want to leave this here and move the 250. So I'm going to subtract 250 to both sides. So I have 0 equals x squared plus 15x minus 250. Now again, you may think that 250 is a big number, but you need to use your divisibility rules. It is even, so 2 will work. It ends in a 0, so 5 or 10 will work. Okay, so we need to factor this. We need to find factors of 250 that subtract out to 15. So those factors are going to be 25 and 10. So 25 times 10 does give me 250, but if I put a subtraction sign here, I do get 15. Okay, so I need a positive 25 and a negative 10, and that's going to equal 0. I need to solve these for x, so x plus 25 equals 0 and x minus 10 equals 0. Subtract 25 on both sides for this one, so I get x equals a negative 25. Add 10 to both sides for this one, and I get x equals a positive 10. Again, we don't want any negative values, so we have to keep the positive here. So we're not done yet. You need to then come back over here to identifying your variables. If x is 10, then our base is 10 feet this time. Okay, and if x is 10, then we have 10 plus 15, which equals 25 feet. Okay, so we have our two dimensions, our base being 10 and our height being 25. Okay, the next problem says two positive even consecutive numbers have a product of 360. So 2 positive, we don't want any negative values, but we do want them even and consecutive. Okay, now remember, if we have consecutive, that means we have x, x plus 1, x plus 2, so on and so forth. But if I have even or odd consecutive, that means I have x, x plus 2, x plus 4, because again, even and odd numbers skip. So we don't want x plus 1, we want x plus 2. We don't want x plus 3, but we want x plus 4. Okay, but I only want 2 of those, so I only need the first one and the second one. Okay, so if you want to, on the whole identifying the variable, you could say that a equals x and b equals x plus 2. You could say the first number and the second number. I don't care how you label these, but again, you need to identify the variable somewhere. And then the problem says that they have a product of 360. So that means that the first number times the second number, the two multiplied together, are going to give us 360. Bless you. So our equation, if you want to do a simple skeleton equation, we could do that. A times B equals product. The A is our first one, so that's x. B is our second one, which is x plus 2. And our product is 360. Okay, so that's your equation. Step 3 is then to work this out. So I'm going to distribute. So I get x squared plus 2x equals 360. So I need to solve for x. So that means I need to have a 0 on the right hand side here. because I want to keep my x squared positive. I don't want to move all of this on the left-hand side to the right-hand side because that'll force this to be negative, which will then make us do a couple extra steps, and we ran on extra steps. Okay, so move the 360 over using subtraction. So I have x squared plus 2x minus 360 equals 0. Again, I need to factor this. So I need to find factors of 360 that subtract out to 2x, or subtract out to 2. So those are going to be 20 and 18. So we want a positive 2, so that's a positive 20 and a negative 18. Okay. 360 is a big number, but just use your divisibility rules. That's what they're there for. And then go from there. So I need to set each of these equal to 0 and solve for x. So I'm going to minus 20 on both sides. So I get x equals a negative 20, add 18 on this one, and x equals a positive 18. Again, we don't want negative values, we only want positive values, so I'm going to use this. So we're going to go back over here. If x is 18, then that means that 18 plus 2 is going to give us 20, a positive 20, but that's why I did not want to pick this one because this is a negative 20. If I would have done a positive 18 and a negative 20, this would have given me a wrong answer because our question says that we want two positive even. Positive. I don't want anything negative. So that's why my two answers are 18 and 20. Okay, one of the things that we need to go over for this section is the Pythagorean theorem. Pythagorean theorem says that if you have a right triangle, that their sides squared, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, so anytime you hear a question that is referring to a right triangle, or when you have a question that is referring to a rectangle, and that rectangle is being split in half by cutting a diagonal line. So if it's talking about a rectangle's diagonal, if you take that diagonal and look at it, you have a right triangle. You actually have two right triangles here. So you have your sides here and your diagonal, which is the hypotenuse here. So if you, again, hear anything about a right triangle, you're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. If you hear something about a right triangle and its sides, and not area, you're going to hear about the Pythagorean theorem. But also if you hear something about a rectangle and you're talking about the diagonal, it becomes, again, draw a picture, draw the diagonal, and you'll see the right triangle. A lot of times the questions that we use this for when we're talking about excuse me, when you're talking about televisions. When you buy a television, if it says it's a 13-inch television, that means that from the diagonal, or from opposite edge to opposite edge here, the diagonal is 13. So again, if you hear a problem that talks about the diagonal, you are going to be working with the Pythagorean theorem. Back on the specifics here, these are called the legs, A and B. It doesn't matter which one is A, it doesn't matter which one is B. Either one can be interswitched, which is fine, but it's the hypotenuse that means something here. The hypotenuse, again, is always the longest side. So if we look at the picture, this is the longer side of the triangle, and it is always opposite the right angle, meaning that it's right there. Okay, so if you stick numbers into the formula incorrectly, you will get a wrong answer. So A and B, it doesn't matter where those go, but C, it does matter where that goes. It has to be entered here. Okay, so A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay, the next question says this 26-foot ladder is leaning against a wall. The bottom of the ladder is 10 feet from the base of the wall. How high on the wall is the ladder? So again, I would draw a picture. We have a wall and a ground. Okay, Okay, we have a ladder leaning up against it. Picture doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, it says the ladder is 26 feet. That's it right there. It says that the bottom of the ladder, which is this part right here, is 10 feet from the base of the wall. So that means that this distance right here is 10. And then it says how high on the wall is the ladder, which is this right here, this measurement right here. So that is our unknown. Okay. So again, your picture is a good identifying the variable. It lets me know what x is representing. We need to come up with an equation. Notice here that this is a right triangle. Okay, walls are perpendicular to the bottom of a ground, meaning that it meets it at a 90-degree angle. So we have to use the Pythagorean theorem here. So a skeleton equation would be a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Come back to our picture. Again, it doesn't matter which one is which for your a and b. So these are your a and b, and because this is opposite the right angle, this is your c. So I'm going to stick this in for a and b, and that in for c. Okay, so 10 squared plus x squared equals 26 squared. Okay, 10 squared is 100. X squared just stays x squared. 26 squared is 676. I know, big number. It's okay. So this needs to be written in descending order, but we also need to bring this 676 over, because again we need this to be 0 in order to solve for x. One side has to be equal to 0. So I'm going to rewrite this as x squared plus 100 equals 676. Subtract the 676 over. I can't write right now. 76. So when I subtract 676 from 100, that means I'm going to get a negative answer because I have more negatives than I do positives. And 100 from 600 is going to be 576. Okay. Now I understand that you don't have a calculator and you can't take out a calculator to find the square root of this in this class. And you do need to find the square root of 576. But you need to know your rules when it comes to multiplication. I need to find a number that when multiplied by itself give me 576. Okay, and let's just start with like our basic. 10 times 10 is 100. 20 times 20 equals 400. And 30 times 30 equals 900. So that means that I will not be using anything that is in the 30s. I will be using something that is in the 20s. So I need to find something. 20 something times 20 something is going to give me 576. Now, you need to pay attention to the last number. Now think about it. If I have 21 times 21, that means the 1 times the 1s are going to multiply. So 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. So that means 22 is out the window. 21 is out the window. 3 times 3 is 9. Doesn't end in a 6. 4 times 4 is 16. That might work. 5 times 5, 25. Doesn't end in a 6. 6 times 6 is 36. So that could work. It ends in a 6. 7 times 7 is 49. Ends in a 9. Doesn't gonna work. So 8 times 8 is 64. Again, not going to work. And then 9 times 9 is 81. Not going to work. So these are my two possibilities, 24 and 26. And it ends up being 24. 26 is too high. So 24 times 24 is what gets me 576. So that means that when I factor this, because again, it's a binomial, I have subtraction going on in the center, but I also have a perfect square right here and a perfect square here. So that means that one of these is going to be a positive 24 and the other one's going to be a negative 24. So again, set each of them equal to 0. Subtract 24 on this one. So I get x equals a negative 24. Not going to use that one because, again, I don't use negatives in my answer. Positive 24, positive 24, I get x equals 24. So that means, I'm going to go back to over here, that means that this is 24 feet up on the wall. Okay, the next problem says one leg of a right triangle is 7 feet longer than the other leg. The hypotenuse is 13 feet. Find the dimensions. So we're talking about a right triangle. I think it's best if you just draw a picture. You don't have to draw a picture, but I think it's a good thing to do. Okay, remember that these two are legs. It says that one leg of a right triangle is 7 feet longer than the other. So again, we have one leg referring to another. That means that this first leg, the other leg, this is the first leg, is our first unknown, so that's going to be x. It doesn't have to be this one. It could be this one if you want to. But it says this one that they're talking about, one leg of a right triangle is 7 feet longer than, meaning plus. That means that this one is x plus 7. Okay, it says the hypotenuse is 13, so that means this goes here. So we have a right triangle. We're talking about the sides of a right triangle, so we have to use the Pythagorean theorem. So a skeleton, again, is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We're going to substitute everything into the equation. So a squared is our x. We're going to square it. My b, now don't forget, my b is a binomial. You need to use parentheses. If you don't use parentheses here, you're going to mess this up. Okay, x plus 7 squared equals 13 squared. Okay, that's our equation. And we're going to have to simplify this before we can start to solve. So x squared is just x squared. This is where I see a lot of problems. This does not mean square this and square this. This means x plus 7 times x plus 7. Okay? That then multiplies out to x squared plus 14x plus 49. That part is this right here. Okay, so remember, if I have a binomial that is to the second power, that means that there are two of them, and then I have to use distribution to figure that out. 13 squared is 169. So this is what I get from my Pythagorean theorem. Okay, I need to combine like terms right here. So I have an x squared and an x squared. So that gives me 2x squared plus 14x plus 49 equals 169. In order to solve this, I need to move the 169 over, so I'm going to subtract 169 on both sides. So I get 2x squared plus 14x minus 120 equals 0. You should always ask yourself, can you factor out a GCF? And we can. So I can factor out a 2. Oops, dropped an X. Okay, so that goes away. So now I need to find factors of 60 that when we subtract them, because again I have a subtraction sign here, a minus sign, that they subtract out to 14. And those two factors are 12 and 5. So positive 12 minus 5 equals 0. Again, the 2 canceled out because I can divide each of these by 2. So I need to solve. So I get x equals a negative 12 and x equals a positive 5. Remember that we are talking about sides of a right triangle, so I cannot use negative 12. I have to use 5. Okay, so that means that one side is 5. The other one is 5 plus 7, which is a positive 12, and this is in feet. Okay, so that means the dimensions of this triangle are 5 feet, 12 feet, and 13 feet. Okay. Okay, this one says the length of a table is 2 feet less than twice the width. The diagonal of a table is 5 feet long. Find the dimensions. So again, I would draw a picture. We're talking about a rectangular table. It says the length of a table is 2 feet less than, meaning that this 2 feet needs to go last. So that means that the length is minus 2 at the end, not 2 minus. It's minus 2. So 2 feet less than. This needs to go last. That's why I have the minus 2 here. So length equals something minus 2. It is less than twice the width. So that means that we don't know what our width is. Our width is, let's just let the width be x. So that means the length is 2x minus 2. But it goes on to say that the diagonal of the table is 5 feet long. Okay, we have a right triangle right here. So that means that we have to use the Pythagorean theorem. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A, again, doesn't matter which one a is, so we're just going to let that be x. We're going to square it. B, we're going to let that be the 2x minus 2 that we had down here. Again, because it's a binomial, you need to write it in parentheses. Equals 5 squared. So we need to work this out. So this becomes x squared plus, because that's just coming down. This, again, is 2x minus 2 times 2x minus 2. So we need to multiply that out. That becomes 4x squared minus 8x plus 4 equals 25. So again, we got this from multiplying this out. Okay, I need to combine like terms. I have 1x here, 4x squared here, or 1x squared, and 4x squared make 5x squared minus 8x plus 4 equals 25. So again, because I need to solve for x, I need to bring this 25 over. So I'm minus 25 on both sides. I get 5x squared minus 8x minus 21 equals 0. So I need to factor this. I should be asking myself, can I factor out any greatest common factor? And the answer to that is no, I cannot. I've got 5, 8, and 21. Can't do anything else. So I need to use, again, it's a trinomial. I have something in front of the x squared. So you need to use the AC method. So that means I've got to take my 5 and my negative 21. And I'm going to get a negative 105. Okay? So that means that I need to find factors of 105 that when they subtract, I get a negative 8. So those factors are going to be negative 15 and 7. Negative 15 and 7 multiply out to 105. Again, the reason, how I found this is because it ends in a 5. That means that I need to use something that ends in a 5. So I tried 5, I tried 15, and then I found it that way. Okay? And the reason why 15 is negative is because, again, I need a negative 8. So negative 5 and a positive 7 give me a negative 8. So I'm going to use the AC method. I'm going to substitute. I'm going to take out the negative 8x, and I'm going to substitute it with my two factors. Okay, so it gives me a quad. Now remember, if we've got a quad, you've got to factor by grouping. So that means I need to come over here to my first part and ask myself, what's the GCF? GCF is 5x, so I'm going to pull out a 5x, which leaves me with x minus 3. Going to come over here to my second grouping here. Going to factor out a positive 7, and I get x minus 3 on that. going to continue by factoring out x minus 3, and my leftovers are 5x plus 7 equals 0. I need to solve for x, so I get x equals 3 here, and I get x equals a negative 7/5. So, because this is a table, we can't use negative 7/5. We want to use positive 3. So that means that my width is 3 feet. And then I need to substitute the 3 into my my expression here. So I get 6 minus 2, which is 4 feet. So that means the dimension of this table is 3 by 4 feet.